fancy background.
Matt, yeah, no, I just saw that it does that. I didn't actually. Now I don't know how to turn it off. Sorry about that. I just had to clean out the kitchen with all the right. Get down the hall. Get your iPad. Go.
Well, I can't see anyway because it's just this lovely green leaf. And are they tears?
I don't know what they are. What is it? Oh, they're planets.
I think they're tears, bro. But what have you got behind? I can just see a couple of shirts behind you. You got like a hockey shirt there.
Yeah. So this is my beloved sports team collection. Wait, how do I do this?
Mate,
I'm just going to try.
I want to see your. I don't want to see your green leaf and. I thought you were going to pop in front of me there. I thought you were going to.
This is. No, see, this is why you shouldn't just tutu with buttons, when you're doing things. You've got to be able to turn that background off.
I use that word in England quite a bit, tutu, and they're like, "What?
Yeah,
come on, oh mate, leave that up, please, leave that up."
There we go. Better. That's what I'll have.
That is much better. I've got my baseball shirt on too, so you know. And these guys go better than your guys, so you know.
Well, not. It depends if we're up against trash cans or not. It's really our thing.
Yeah, trash can rule. Yeah. But how funny is that? Some guys
I know
the rubbish bin is the best way to win games of baseball.
Yeah, crazy, eh? Crazy. Like you think with all that. I mean, all the sort of advancements that you could make. Because I think wasn't there one that they thought as well that sometimes they were wearing. It might have been the Apple, the buzzers or the Apple Watch or something like that. Or on
their shirt, and they every time he hit a home run, they'd come and rip his shirt off. But he was like, "Can't do it." With the buzzer on this time. When he hit a thing, he was like, "Don't." So, mate, hilarious stuff. Hey, we'll get going because I don't want to waste material. There's a pretty good chance I might even just use this and try and stick an intro on the front. Mate, it's all good. Nathan Rarere, how's that for pronunciation? Is that all right?
Very good. Yes, thank you.
Mate, hey, good to see you. Thank you for coming on. This is cool. Last time we spoke voice to voice was back in your Channel Z days when I rang in and won a competition, a Monkey Magic box set.
Oh, did you?
Oh, kia ora, yeah. And it never arrived. I never got it.
Sorry.
I only ever got 2 pizzas, and I would have happily changed those 2 pizzas for my Monkey Boys box set.
Oh my God! Well, I'm going to blame Lauren for that. Lauren Whitney. She was in charge of sending ones out. Just interrupted it. Oh my God! Do you know? I actually remember giving those away because I think that we got like a box of, might have been about 10 of them or something. Yeah. So what you always did was you always made up a name. Everyone in radio makes up a name, and you kept one. Yep. And I loved that, man. Like that was, I think, when was that on, bro? Was that like Saturday afternoons? It used to be on quite early, or Saturday, Sunday mornings, eh?
Bro, I can't remember, but I remember I was in the car. I was driving when talking on the telephone back when that was, okay.
When it was okay.
And I was on my mobile, and it was like, this is sweet. I think, mate, this may have been like early 2000s.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a feeling I was driving to the basin for a game of cricket at the morning. So it might have been like a Saturday or a Sunday morning.
It makes it even better.
Yeah, so I'm still hanging out for my Monkey Magic. That series was iconic.
It was, man. Okay, well, if I can find one in my, because I don't know why, but my wife and I sort of keep all our old DVDs. We just can't bear to part with them. Like, even though I don't think we've actually got a DVD player in the house anymore, but it just seems like, the hunting trophies. That's what they are. I'll look at these things I've watched
and painting your walls. Mate, how you going?
Oh, COVID. I'm going pretty COVID. So it's been an interesting week. So we went into lockdown a little bit early. So I've actually been in lockdown a little bit longer because my wife's got an autoimmune disease and she's only got one kidney. So basically the doctor was like, right, once it hits level 3, that's got to be inside for you. Because she overproduces white blood cells. Sure. So that's really, really dangerous if you get something like an infection like this, because the body rushes to do it and that'll fill her lungs much faster and stuff, unfortunately. So So with the being inside bit isn't actually that bad. It's just on Monday I went on holiday, and this is great. So I'm like, sweet, you know, so I didn't have to wake up at 4.
Yeah,
that was incredible. It was going really well, and then I got to the point where I'd done my morning stuff, and I thought, oh well, I'll have a nap because I can. And then got the phone call at 11:45. Oh, there's a Zoom meeting we'll have to be on for work. I'm like, oh, okay. And like normally you get some of those. I don't know if there's a change in the format or whatever, and it had been discussed. Oh, look, maybe they might have to put ZB on partially during the day. So you check the email and you see the CEO's name there. You see an HR person's name there. You see someone else and you're like, oh, I know what this meeting is. I know what this meeting is. So that was where we all gathered around the phones, and everyone at Radio Sport found out we'd been shut down. And that it was that quick, like no indication at all. I know that Kent, who I normally work with, he'd actually left the studio at 9 o'clock and was like, okay, bye. And out he went. And no indication at all. And he's been there pretty much since day one. So you might have thought if there was something they'd tell him, but apparently our bosses were actually still hopeful at 9 o'clock that we would get the stay of execution. But so I guess for us at Radio Sport, we ended up being if there's any sort of silver lining or philosophical way you can look at it, I mean, stink for us, but hopefully, if they felt that we were the weak antelope on the edge of the herd, let the lion get us, and then hopefully everyone else gets away. So that'd be it. I mean, like, it's shit, but it's part of what happens. I suppose it's like having a contract at a county or something, and then it gets dissolved for something else, or a newer flasher bowler comes in from overseas. That's just kind of it. It's just kind of our gig, you know. Yeah, and every gig I've ever got is because I've replaced someone else, and it would be the same with you.
You've what gig or what gigs haven't you done quite yet? And I say that with the utmost respect, as opposed to saying that with what haven't you done?
Oh,
because you've been everywhere, man.
Yeah, I have actually. It's kind of one of those things, and it's weird. I think it's my age. Like, you sit back and you just reflect on stuff, and you look back and go, oh, I have done some things. Because I applied for a job earlier on this year, which I was just looking at, and so I thought, oh, I'll just put my CV together. And it was just one of those ones where you look at and you go, oh, yeah, I've done some stuff. I've gone all right in a few things, and it's quite a good feeling, because I think when I started in it, like, I started while I was still in high school doing the radio, so I didn't really have when people say, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I used to hate that question in an interview, because I didn't really know, because and I've always been like this. I haven't wanted to just be looking at one thing. Like, if I'm looking at it and there's something over there that go, heck, actually that's a better tangent to be on, then that's the one I'd like to go. So I've sort of bounced around and doing things. I guess the thing I haven't done is been a program director at a radio station, which is like coaching in a way that you set the program, you can really help with the newer staff. You sort of set the tone and the shape of the station and what it is. Like, I've been a music director, which is where you pick the music, right? And that's a pretty cool thing to do.
Yeah.
It's just fun, you know. It's like basically just getting to hog the playlist on this on this national thing where new music just arrives to you all the time.
Hey, this is my station, okay? We're playing my music. It's a team game.
Yeah.
Do it my way.
Yeah, it's basically that. So I just saw that opportunity pop up, and I thought, oh, well, I'll apply for it anyway. But that's where I felt lucky. But honestly, when I think when I was 14, I actually bumped into my old careers teacher. I was back in Hastings, and I was watching Hastings Boys first 15 play Lindisfarne, and my old teacher, Mr. McCracken, I still call him Mr. McCracken, came up and he goes, oh, Nathan, I remember you came into my office and you said, I want to get paid as much money as I can for doing as little work as possible. And he goes, and I suspect you've bloody well done it.
Good game.
But I wanted to be a cartoon character voice. That was it. Like, I had various jobs that I wanted to do in my life. I funeral director. I wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to be a baker.
You wanted to be a funeral director?
That was the first job I really didn't want to do. Yeah.
Is that when you found out 75% profit?
Yeah, pretty much. No, my sister died when I was 7, and in Hastings.
Hey, Nathan. That's a real shit way to turn the conversation around.
Oh no, really, no. Look, it's no. What I would say is, like, so she died when I was 7, and And in Hastings at the time, you know, you're 7, right? So in Hastings at the time, it was the 80s. It was like New Zealand was like the unemployment capital of the world. Yeah. Hastings was. So it used to be us and Whangarei. Like, you'd always be like watching the news, and then it was like, you know, and they've got this % unemployment. And I remembered that there were always stories in the back, where, you know, there was like the deaths, and there's that thing where people go through, oh, look, oh, someone's died. You know, my mum and dad would be like, oh, blah, 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 died. Who's that? Oh, that's Thingy's cousin. Yeah, and I'm a little boy, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, you'd have worked forever doing this. So that was actually the appeal of it. But I think actually, no, Kim dying was, so she was very sick. She had quite severe epilepsy. Oh. I think actually, it was actually, what's the word? How do I put it in a way? It was a good thing to learn early on that you don't get forever. Yeah.
Most people get pets. Most people get pets for that sort of thing, and you've kind of, okay. I see you take the best bit out of it, but that's that shapes you. That shapes you.
Yeah, but yeah, it does, and I think I'd like to think that's the bit that shaped me out of it, was the whole. It makes that whole carpe diem thing seem very real, because you're like, oh, okay, right, let's, you know, you don't get here forever. So, for example, when my dad died, and you know, he lived a fantastic innings, and because I'm a bit younger than my siblings, if you know what I mean, so he you know, he lived that as well. And when he died, I remember thinking like, right, I've got to go to the Tangi. And at that stage, my wife and I, our daughter Ryla was only 4, and we were thinking like, gosh, what should we do with this? And I spoke to my best mate, and he said, well, you've been straight up with us since day one. Why don't you just do it? So took her with us. Some people are like, oh, you can't take a 4-year-old to see a dead body. But I think maybe that's one of the great things about a tangi, because you go in, there's Dad in his coffin. You put pictures of them up around the wall. And what was really cool was there were pictures of him throughout his life. And so, you know, one of the rules is that you never leave the body alone. There's always going to be someone there with them, right? So Ryla, she learnt that, oh, okay, so that's Papa. And I said, it's all right, give him a kiss. So she gave him a kiss on the head. She went, oh, he's a bit cold. I went, yeah. I said, but that's what happens. See, she's like, oh, okay. And the cool thing is, she now gets it. So we don't have to shield things from her later on. It's like, oh, some people died. And she's like, oh, you know, it's not like some people went away, or someone went to heaven, or someone's an angel now. It's just like they died. Okay. And she understands that too. And of course, the inevitable question comes straight out. You're not going to die, are you, Dad? I'm like, I am, but I'm not planning to just at the moment. So we'll be good, because that's really the most honest answer you can give. So, but I kind of felt, in a way, that lesson sort of got passed on to her as well, if you know what I mean. So her and her little sister, they're both, they get that it happens. You know, we've lost a couple of cats, so we did the thing where we did lots of crying as a family, and like you say, and got in through those. But yeah, that's where the whole funeral director thing came from. And I was definitely wanting to. And I remember being quite disappointed on careers night at Heretatonga Intermediate when no funeral director came in. I was like, come on, I want to find out about this.
Well, you were at Heretatonga. I did not realise you were up at Heretatonga.
Yeah. So did that, and then I wanted to be a baker, because it turned out I was accidentally really good at home economics. So me and my cooking partner Scott Turi, who we both did a really good. We accidentally changed the school recipe for ginger nuts because we put a wrong ingredient in, and the cooking teacher was like, "These are great. These are really good. What did you do?" So that, and then pilot, because of course, you know, you think it's going to be pretty cool to fly around. That looks pretty neat. And then I found out that you had to do maths, so I didn't want to do it anymore. And that's where cartoon character voice sort of came from, out of nowhere. Yeah. And then I got lucky because my mate Oscar Kitely put me on Brotown. So there we go. So I did work on Brotown for about 3 of the 4 seasons. And that was, of all the jobs, that was the one where you get in. I don't know if you ever had a walking back to the top of your mark and turning around or whatever and going like, this is it, man.
Stop doing those analogies. Stop doing those analogies. Just give me your, But
you no. Well, you were I just guess that's what I'd think. It felt like it. That was like, oh man, this is it. And I remember, so you go in there and they do this little thing where there's like a camera that films your mouth. So it's on top of the microphone in a really interesting way. But that's because they tried to do as much of the animation as they could in New Zealand. New Zealand was pretty good at it, but quite slow. So a lot of it had to go to India to get done. And man, they just get work done boof, like that, and it's back in a second. So they basically filmed your mouth as you spoke, and then so it was a little odd in that way, because I quite like doing voiceovers. Because there was a guy called Mark Perry, who's one of the greats of all time in New Zealand broadcasting, and he came and talked to us about reading ads, and I was never very comfortable with it. And he was like, "It's great, because it's like you get to be an actor, but there's sort of no one there right in front of you, so you can just live it up." And he goes like, I hate seeing people reading ads where they're just standing still and holding the bit of paper. Yeah. You know, get your body into it. You know, do that. Are you talking about someone who's walking? Is the script someone walking? Then bloody walk. Then do those things, and it was a really, really good thing. So, but then with the cartoon, I had to be a little bit sort of still to get it done. But that was the one, and I remember I got out. I thanked Oscar, and I just remember getting out and sitting in the car and driving home, and then realizing my face hurt because I just had this huge smile, because it was like I got to do that. I actually got to do that. And there's the weird bits where you get all, oh shucks, you know, and you think back to Hastings and think, man, that was.
When did you? So you got a phone call or to do that, and that's that little bit that goes. You're like, oh wow, this is cool, sweet. Who was the first person you called to tell? Who was that person you went, I just got her?
Oh, I share with my big sister Carolyn. Yeah. She's generally the one that most of the things go to. Guess what I'm doing? What?
Yeah. No, look, it's one of those. I remember getting that phone call at a Wellington training to make the New Zealand team, to make the test team against Australia, and I got that phone call at training, and it was all a bit weird because a few of them all sort of come over. They knew what that phone call often meant. When someone got pulled out, the coach gives them the phone, they kind of understand what that meant. That was strange. I'm in the car and I'm driving home, and I ring my best mate who lives in Napier, and I'm just like, bro,
just what happened?
Hey, do you know what's just happened? Of course he frickin' doesn't. Like, it's just the most stupidest question in the whole wide world. It's just like, I've got to go to Christchurch in a few, you know, like, it's really hard to get your head around it. But you had obviously been in the industry for a long time before Brotown came about.
Yeah. So I started in radio when I was at school. It actually took off for me. So I went on the most fortunate year of my life, I think, was I got to be a Rotary exchange student. So I went and lived in Calgary and in Canada, and one of the guys in the Rotary Club, because you've got a lot of quite wealthy older guys that own things, he owned a radio station. So I sort of went up there a couple of times to just go and have a look at things, and it was country music, which is still very big in Calgary. And so I got to go and do a little bit there, and I watched things happen. And I remember like seeing the afternoon guy, and he seemed really cool. I was like, oh, this is pretty neat. And then came back to New Zealand, and what was on? I think it was, there was some sort of event happened, and I had to go to the radio station to stop and get something. And I walked into 93 FM, and David Elliott was a guy I used to go to school with, and he had actually started working there. So he was in my year during the exchange. He ended up going forward. He went in to do this job. Basically, he was doing it for a year before he could go and learn how to fly planes. And then while I was there, he went, "Oh man, you should drop in your CV." Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you should go and do that. So I ended up actually blagging a part-time job there. So, and then the part-time job, because a dude got fired, someone else was away, and there was no one else that knew how to push the buttons. The boss comes over to me one day, and remember, I'm in my school uniform here, and I've got put my school bag down, doing this job, and just basically like a filing job. And the boss comes over and goes, and he could never remember my name. Jason, Nathan. Yes, you know how to work the desk? Yeah, okay. So can you do midnight till 6 in the morning? And this is in the days before automation. So they actually wanted you to come and do that. And I'm like, oh, I've got school. Okay. So I did that. So I rode home and told Dad, told Mum and Dad. And then basically what happened from then, it just sort of snowballed a bit, because I could do character voices. I was doing theatre sports acting at that time. In Calgary, one of my host sisters was at the University of Calgary, and that's where the Loose Moose Theatre is, and that's actually where theatre sports was invented, was right there. So I got to have a really early view at that. And that was like I hate that term, but it was like a game changer for me. That was like, oh man, this is like an entirely ad-libbed kind of thing. And I admired the smoothness of it. And their big thing was always, don't try and say anything too clever. Like, just try and think of what is next. And actually, that's often and easily a good enough surprise for people listening or people watching. And I've sort of tried to hang on with that, because sometimes I think you can try and overextend yourself and get too clever on things. But anyway, so I kind of used that in the morning, because the guy that came in to do the breakfast show, because normally I'd do midnight till 6, right? And I thought I could go home for a couple of hours straight to sleep and then go to school. And he was like, oh, actually, I need help, getting the birthday calls and doing stuff. And I was like, okay. So I did that. And he was Jehovah's Witness. And he said, look, I can't read the birthday calls because it's a pagan ceremony. So could you read them for me? And I thought, and I was like, oh my God. And I was too nervous, like I was thinking, like, hang on, there's too many people listening. And he said, I'll do it in one of your voices, because he'd heard me mucking around in the afternoons, because he was only filling in the morning. So I just did this voice, and he went, oh, that's great. And then the next morning when I'm doing, he goes, hey, I've written some jokes. Can you do these? Do it as the voice. What if we do this? So he invented this scenario where the character voice I was doing became a cartoon. The regular host came back, and then I ended up doing, so my school year finished with me doing midnight till 6 in the morning by myself on air. Wow. And then I would do 2 hours of the breakfast show, where I was sort of taking the phone calls and doing that as well, but I was being like a live host. And then I'd get on my bike and I'd bike to school. And then I'd go to school and go there until about lunchtime. And then a couple of my teachers would talk me through what was going on in the last 2 hours of the day at school. And then I'd bike home. I'd go to sleep. My dad would wake me up at about 11 o'clock at night by pulling my duvet off me. Go on, off you go. And then I'd basically get in my uniform and get on my bicycle and ride into the middle of Hastings and go up to the top of the BNZ building and do it. And it was fantastic. Like, it was really, really cool. And it was actually, now that I look back at it, it's quite rare. Wow. So I sort of got in through the back way, if you know what I mean. Yeah, but
that's everyone's back way, isn't it? Everyone gets in the back way by doing.
Yeah, true.
There's a lot more stories of being the junior and then working your way through to, oh, hello, there's a little there's an opening here, but that little that voice, do it in your voice, do it in a voice. That's a pretty cool piece of advice, isn't it? In terms of how it all began.
It was. Yeah, it really was, because, and I think you'll often find, like, when people talk about when you meet an actor, and so I've got quite a few mates that are actors, and a lot of them talk more confidently when they're in character.
Yep.
Yeah, it just is, because it's kind of like a mask you're wearing that's not really there. So that's where it worked out for me, doing it as his name was Nigel.
Same as radio voice, isn't it? Though, when you're on radio, you're all of a sudden you go, "Oh, we're on radio," and well, it's not quite 90s radio rock, dude. It's not quite that, but there is this. Yeah. You do have to puff your chest out, because you have to convey, because I can't see you, so you have to convey that you're having a great time and everything is just going smoothly.
They have this, what was the one they used to say to us? And so I've been lucky enough to been through quite a few evolutions of radio. Like, I'm a cockroach, mate. I've been around forever. So 1990 was the first time I went on air. That's when I was doing that school stuff. But it was just things like, they'd say, type, bright and real. And the weird bit was, you've got to be efficient with your words. You've got to sound up and you've got to sound real. And I used to sit there as a kid and think, like, none of you sound real. You all sound like this. And I think so. I went. Yeah,
I think that was what dragged me to Channel Z, actually. Going back in terms of radio stations, it was mostly rock as opposed to 91 FM, as opposed to sort of classic pop. And then it was just two people talking. Say, when you and John Bridges were on, it was just two people having a chat, having a laugh, as opposed to radio DJs.
That was it. Well, that was. I'm pleased you felt that, because that was kind of the idea. Like, so when I started out, we used to do these things where you'd have voice coaches come in, and everyone spoke with this lovely register, and I just couldn't do it, because my voice is what you call quite thin for a radio voice. Like, it's not very bassy. It doesn't really come from my chest. And so that's where the characters were great, because if I had have tried to do what everyone else done, I just wouldn't have made it at all. And we had a guy that came, and he was your voice coach, and he said I had a dark L and a lazy T. And my very first voice check I did, the program director actually said, "Yeah, we probably wouldn't put you on air with a voice like yours," you know. And that was about 2 months before.
What about my face?
I ended up doing. Yeah, exactly. You know, that was about 2 months before I actually ended up going on air and that whole accidental thing, right? So I'd pretty much given up on it. But I think one of the things was like I knew again that I couldn't do what everyone else could, so I had to find a different way to do it. So that just became my style. And the other thing where I think I was really lucky was that I did midnight till dawn shift. I did that for over a year. So it's about 14, 15 months. And by that stage, you look really pasty. You've got parents pulling kids off the street when you come near them. You know what I mean? And get this, bro. So I used to do that. I did the breakfast show. I also had to take the rubbish down the stairs twice a week.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was up on the 5th floor, but I wasn't allowed to use the lift so to make the lift stink. So you'd put a song on, run out, run down with bags, run back up again. And then I had to do all that. And man, I hated the sales reps, because you had to like clean everyone's coffee cups and do all that as well. Refile all the songs and records that were all out of place, all the CDs and stuff. And I got paid $8,000 a year. And I remember, it wasn't a huge amount of money.
Well, I mean, for how old you were, it's not bad, but yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, they were on a win. They were doing.
They were on, As I look at it, considering the amount of things that character voice I did ended up being stuck on or sold as a sales thing, they must have just been like, "How good is this? We've got this idiot kid."
With that character voice, are you like the original Buzzo Bumble and Wally Wetter? Is that right?
No, Jeremy Corbett. He's
all right.
He's it, man. He was it. So anyway, he was at 2XS in Palmerston. That's where he came from. And so there was this thing in radio called The Lift. And there was the 2XS lift, and the 2XS lift went from 2XS to 91 FM in Auckland, or 2XS to 89. And then 93 FM where I worked had a couple that went that way, but it was always out of the lift. So Jeremy Corbett came out of there. Roger Clamp, who was like the supreme music programmer forever, he went up that way as well. Vaughan Hobbs, who was another one, he went up there as well. But Corbett was always the king of the radio voices. But when I listened to things growing up, like my absolute radio hero was a guy called Kent Robertson, and he used to do all the funny voices. And then you'd have like the Rick D's Top 40, and that would have funny voices in it and stuff. And then when I was overseas, I listened to different North American things, and so I always kind of liked those, and that's where I saw a way forward. Because, for example, a guy Doug Mulray out of Sydney was the king of radio there forever, but he had a very different way of using his voice, so that was pretty much what I went for. But with Channel Z, that was the whole point, mate. It was just basically the point was John and I would come up with ideas in our head, and then it was bring them to work in the morning and try and make each other laugh. And that was as simple as it was, you know. And he's super funny, so I laughed all the time.
You know, he's super talented. I've never got to talk to him, but like in terms of what he's done and seen him bits and hilarious, you know, very cool. Hey, is there a and this is where I go a little bit inside Nate's head. Is there an element that those voices are the actually the antithesis of you? Are they actually like the confidence? Are they that little bit that you sometimes hide behind? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think they are, particularly when you're younger and starting out, because a lot of the time, like the things that I could say to my co-host, because you know, you got to remember I was very young and brand new to it, and you're not quite sure if you put a foot wrong if you're going to keep a job. So you worry about, you know, you're not worried about it, but you know what I mean? You're cautious about it, I should say. And then there's this guy sitting across from me, the Reverend Rex Lithgow, who had been quite a name in radio, and was seen as a lot of people quite scared of him. But I could be a lot more, I could be ruder to him. I could be cheekier to him, you know. You could all the bits in the background that you want to be cheeky, because I was quite a cheeky kid early on. You could sort of do that with them, if you know what I mean. But you can, and I think you're right. You can explore that, like doing character acting. Like we, we invented a character when I was doing Ice TV called Clayan Funda Funda, who was the man who invented everything. So it was just and that was just basically it. And it came up, John and I were on a flight back from somewhere. We only came up with that name and the man who invented everything, and then just sat there and giggled away to ourselves for like 40 minutes. And you haven't even got anything solid, but it's really neat watching an idea grow. Yeah. So he became this one. It was basically just a backlit person who was just sitting talking, and he's a really aloof kind of Euro sounding guy. And it was just like one of, like the interviewer would say, like, what about, I don't know, brown paper? And then one of us would just, and we both used to do them, one of us would just rattle off a big line of bullshit about how it was invented in this way because of something in this way, And then, and then what happened? Then what happens is your head goes and your hands go with it as well, and again that whole body, your whole body moves, and that's what makes it. Half the time, the actual jokes, when you read them out, they're not funny, but it's just it's the situation of comedy that makes them that. So,
we've lost him. Nate's fallen off the face of the planet. We'll come back.
Sorry about that. Got a phone call from Darcy Baldergrave. So there I am.
Oh.
Yeah. So, but that's what was I? Yeah, but that's kind of like those characters are like that because you can delve in and pull them out. And Kevin Smith was the great Kevin, I call him. Funny man, funny dude, funny actor, and that. And I remember talking to him once about like, with acting, how do you guys do it? Because to me, I would look at them and think, how do you remember all those words?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you make it convincing that they are your words? Because I think that's most of the things that I see people struggle with is like, how do you make it sound like yours? And then he said to me, so what I do is I just figure out, I read the script right, and then I like just normal reading. He goes, and then I figure who I've known in my life that this is most like, and then I just do a halfway between me and them. And that's pretty much where I go, and it's a halfway, so it's further enough away from my personality that I can act, but I'm not doing a complete parody of someone else. It sort of gets where it goes, and then eventually that's where I start, and then it just turns into a person along the way. And so we would kind of try and do that with a lot of the character voices anyway.
So are you learning to fly a plane now?
No, well. Oh, please, mate. Do you know, I didn't get glasses till I was 18, and so it's weird because people always talk about what your favourite books are, but I didn't like reading. Like, I hated reading when I was a kid. Like, I did most of my learning watching docos or listening to things or whatever, and I didn't realise until it was at the age of 18 it's because looking at books actually hurt my eyes because I've got a squint, so one of my eyes isn't perfectly like that. So as I was read books, it would really hurt my head.
Mm-hmm.
So I hated doing that. Like, the worst thing at school for me was writing in the book and then having to look up at the board because the time it took to focus took forever to get there, right? And it really hurt. So, and I remember walking out of the optometrist when I was 18 and putting them on and just being like, oh, come on. You guys could see this. This is bullshit. And I was like, you can see people's faces over the road, and like just being able to see a tree and knowing that you could see individual leaves. And I just remember I was actually quite pissed off. I just remember thinking,
you've been holding this back from me. It
was.
Yeah. And I guess that then curtailed. Well, that meant that you couldn't play sports previous to that either. So that kind of makes you even more suck. Like,
exactly.
No, I can. No, it's too late.
But that was the thing, because I did, like most Kiwi kids, did the cricket, did the rugby, did a bit of soccer, but swimming was really my thing. But of course, see, you can't tell because you got your goggles on and you're underwater, and you're living this
one line.
You're living this. Oh, that line! Oh my God, that line!
But that's all you had to focus on. You didn't even have to squint.
It's when I think about it, I think actually the swimming training was what trained me for radio, really, because it's quite solitary.
Sure.
Because you're just talking to yourself with that. So I had a great chat with
yourself
with Loader, with Daniel Loader and Dean, with Daniel Loader and Dean Kent. And obviously I never got to their level, but I was swimming at nationals and that kind of thing. But we were just talking about how many times at training were you so frustrated and hated it so much that you cried into your goggles, and all three of us were like, oh my God, so many times, so many times. You were just, as a kid, I remember you'd be swimming freestyle and you'd be going, and just like slapping your arms because you hated it and stuff. And like one of the coaches used to have this meter ruler, and if you flicked your hand wrong, he'd crack your knuckles as you were swimming to, you know, to try and get you to get your elbow up above that or whatever. So so weirdly, I was whippet thin and super fit when I was younger.
Right.
And, yeah.
Me too. I'm easily so you swam.
Yeah, that was my 100 meters breaststroke was.
And how you were lifting your arm there was like you can tell.
I love
swimming
at the Olympics.
That's something I did not know. I did not know that like I thought you were gonna be a regular kid that hit tennis balls and hit cricket balls and did all that. But swimming is one that I didn't really see you being good at. Now I find out about your eyes. It's the only one you could do, you know.
Yeah, well, you only can get away with it for so long. I think, well, we started, like, I can't remember any part of my childhood where I wasn't a part of the Mahora Swimming Club or the Hawke's Bay team or whatever, you know, like we just were. And the big one you used to train for was called the tally printers. And that was the big one because that was either in Hamilton or Auckland, and that was like the nationals that you got to go to. And I just remember thinking like, oh man, these cities are huge. Like they don't have a main street, they have main streets. You know, this is incredible. And oh my God, look how many dairies are on one street. You know, like that was the excitement for me was getting to go to this. And then you'd go and then, you know, you're sort of around that, I guess that peak age before you're about 14, you know, you're sort of heading there to all these national tournaments. You're like, man, there's kids coming from everywhere. This is great, you know, like you'd get into things like swapping caps and goggles and getting billeted and things like that. So that's where it was. But it is a
my tears in them. These goggles got my tears in them.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, but it was funny to hear that. It's like everyone did, and you think like even the greatest, you know, like Daniel, even he got to that stage with the whole. You just because it's so monotonous, but it's also got to be so perfect, and that's obviously why they train you that way because you know you run out of energy early on, so then technique is what keeps you going. So my sport that I could do, because I didn't have any siblings around my age, so it was pretty much stuff by myself. So the other one I did was I would run down the driveway and I had a handkerchief and a wicket and I used to just bowl into that non-stop. So my poor parents would have the sound of a tennis ball going thump, thump, thump into the back door. Because I know into backwards. So I was actually a bowler when I played cricket. But see, that was the thing, because I could never figure out, how do people see the ball? Like, this is incredible, you know. And, you know, so I was a very enthusiastic number 11 batsman, I'll tell you that. That I didn't have to bat. Yeah, but then later on when I got glasses, I was like, oh, hang on. I actually didn't become that much of a better batsman, but at least I had more of a chance to see. It just made me back away a little more, actually.
I mean, you got hurt less often.
I understood the danger. Yeah.
What? This is preposterous.
Yeah.
You can't get hurt in a swimming pool, can you?
No, you can't. Well, the one that you get is cramp. That's the one that gets you.
Yeah.
Oh, it's terrible. And you're swimming along. Or the other one is that you know, you're swimming along and you get cramp at just the worst time, and it's usually when you've pushed off from a tumble turn, because there's something about that injection of energy, and you push off and do the and then you get crashed into by someone who's right behind you. Or but no, apart from that, but yeah, that was my thing, man.
I play water polo now. That's my non-load bearing activity, and
oh my God, that's crazy.
It's not as the level we play isn't as nasty as it is a little bit sometimes, but it's all even. Like if whatever they do, you do, or whatever you do, they'll do. So it's sort of, if no one.
Cool.
It's sort of pretty much you set the tone of it. But yeah, cramp and water polo is you just left the pool like no, it's all right, I'll go. Yeah, you sort of. I know that pain. It's not cool, mate. What is there? What's next then? What are you doing next?
So. I think that the broadcasting world, like I think like a lot of industries, this pause, I'm going to call it the world pause, right? Yeah, I think there are a lot of industries that have been kind of trying to exist like they used to, and I think this is their chance to find out that you can't now. Mm-hmm. That you've got to change how you are
Yeah.
So the short answer is myself and a guy that I work with, where Mark Peard, we're getting into that sort of online podcasting world type space, type thing. We've set it up properly. We've got a business plan. We've got, this kind of thing with a business manager or what have you. But this is probably more of the presentation of it. And I think one of the things is that particularly if you have a look at radio sport, I think that for a lot of what happened over the last couple of years, you just kind of felt that it was things like, look, don't worry, guys, we'll get this World Cup back on air, and it'll be great. It'll be just like it was in 2007. People will love it, we've got this going, and this will rescue us, and it'll be just like it was back then. And I think that just like it was back then, it's just such a dangerous answer to anything, because that's not the way to go at all. So I'm, and this does relate to it, as you know, my brain jumps around over the place. But I'm doing a lot of school board stuff now, and the school that I'm involved with is Hobsonville Point. So we've got a secondary school and a primary school, but the two principals at the schools are your classic disruptors. So they've come in and gone, well, we can teach kids all these points we're supposed to. We can teach them that, but why do I have to teach them the way that everyone else is? Because And it's along the lines of, I can teach your kids in a way that you understand, parents. But this isn't 1992 or 1994, and the jobs aren't the same, right? So all your big companies now started after the year 2000, and most of them are online. So when we went into lockdown, our two daughters found it really easy. They're like, oh yeah, so they just logged in, and now this is the way classrooms work. Like, you go in the morning, there's a list of stuff to do. You estimate how much you can do in a day. You write your work plan. You take it to your teacher. Your teacher goes, all right, set your own timetable. Go for it. Wow. Bring it back to me at 2:30. So that's how they do it now. And the point is like the principle's about, and you know what? They're going to fail, and they're going to stuff it up for the first 3 or 4 months. That's fine. That is fine. And it's about teaching them how to manage a day, and how to manage like that clock in your head of how much you can do. And then, if they're putting too little on their plate, the teachers notice that, so they'll try and load them with a little more. If they're getting a little confident, you just try and chuck a spanner in the works to see how they cope with something not working. And
I've noticed with our kids at school, compared to my time, compared to my wife's time, like learning timetables, learning timetables was wrote 2 times 2 was 4, 3 times 2 was 6, and it was just like you would just over and over and over again. Except at the school where our kids are at the moment, go and learn your timetables, go and work it out, go and learn that 2 lots of 3 is 6, go and learn that 2 lots of 4 is 8. So there's this teaching the kids to problem solve as opposed to teaching the kids to remember. And I'm a massive fan of that. And my wife is like, but that's not how I learned it. It's like, but if we teach them to problem solve first, then nothing holds them back at any stage. So I like that.
And that's kind of my philosophy with the way that we've worked in our media now. I think we're still trying to make it work like we used to, but a lot of it is still pegged to, because that's how it works with the sales team. So the sales team pay for everything, and they need there to be certain ad blocks at certain times, and that's what we need. For example, TV shows, like I've done a lot of those, and they work on that whole sort of 48-minute 1 hour thing, or 46-minute hour thing.
21-minute half hour one.
But the problem is sometimes you're like, do you know what? It's not interesting enough to be that amount of time, or I've got so much more to say. So you're actually bound by something different. Whereas this is why I think this I hate this word, this space is the way to go, because stuff is as long as it is interesting. And if it's only 17 seconds, that's fine. Like you're going from TikToks right through to big full pods. And that's kind of how people want to consume things. And also too, I think the days of the super analytical sports brain person is there's very, very little space for that now. I think people now they're kind of in a weird way getting back into the enjoyment of stuff, the fun of things when you watch it. So people as listeners just like hearing fun about sport. I think sports was fun. And I think that waggling your fingers at administrators was weird, because you kind of turned more from being a station talking about sport, or an industry, I should say, talking about sport when you read things and watch things, to talking about business and contracts and states of competitions and all of those, and it's like you forget talking about the game.
I never short of an opinion, Nate. But there's a, there's
that's why we love you.
Yeah, sure. Is that? I'm not. Yeah, all right. Okay, I'll work that one out later. There's a part of me that sort of, and I hated this, that I could see radio sport going backwards so quickly, and I talked to Daniel McCarty a bit, and I'm quite good, consider myself, me and Snake and I, reasonable friends, and there's an element that nothing was changing, everything was just same, and then there's access to players, and I spoke to him just a wee while ago in terms of, look, you've got this massive opportunity to do long format interviews. Yeah, get a guy on the phone for an hour. Have AIG sponsor having an All Black on the phone for an hour. Have AIG, have Powerade sponsor, having a New Zealand netballer on the radio. Have them sponsor that hour and do it a long format. And there was this element that, the players don't want to. The media managers don't allow them. There's no space to get the players on the radio. And it was like, those relationships have become pretty burnt because of too much talk about contracts and organisation. And so there was an element of bridges were burnt. And so you then had no sports people. When you lost the sports content, you had no sports people content. Yeah. And that sucked.
Yeah, it did. I mean, I can fully understand it, because they were paranoid that they'd come on, they'd have a good chat with us, and then they'd find that one part of it was taken out and just blown out of context as a Herald article or a Stuff article or in our thing. And I can understand that. And I think because, so a lot of the guys I worked with had never been on the other end of an interview. Mm-hmm. And so for example, one of my best workmates of all time, Petra Vegas, right? So Petra, we did Ice TV. She did one sentence of something in an interview with the listener, and that became her identity. And she was like, oh, really? You're going to go with this? And it was the I'm saving myself for marriage. And that was it. She just mentioned it in passing in one interview, and that became it. And everywhere we went, it's like Petra the Virgin. That was kind of her thing. Yeah. And as she even mentioned it in her wedding speech, look, this wasn't about, for God or anything like that. It was actually just for me and my husband, for example, this became it. And so I could see it from that point of view. Yeah. Plus, when I was very young, one of my other sisters, she went on a Rotary exchange to South Africa, and that's when apartheid was still going. So my grandfather was Te Aki Omana. He was the MP for Eastern Māori for quite a long time. He ran against
Nato. Very white Calgary, and your sister went to very
Man,
wow.
She did the classic thing where she was, walking home, and she went to they put her in a private school, and she came home, and so she had the classic one where the policeman pulls over and wants to know why a coloured girl is masquerading in this outfit in this white neighbourhood. So she had a bit of that sort of thing went on, and so she came back quite hurt by it. But before we left, because my grandfather had been quite important in Māoridom, Te Aki was, he got it changed from the Ministry of Native Affairs to Māori Affairs, and to actually having a fair process with iwi land claims and stuff. Because a lot of people don't know that what used to happen. The reason that these ones take so long and they're getting through them all now is because they tried to rush them through a long time ago and said, "All right, you can have an hour to state your case." Go, oh, I couldn't state your case. Boom, we get it. So that was what he worked on. So we had this reporter. I mean, we were at home just eating dinner, and I would have been about 9, I think. And I just remember this reporter basically just walking into our house. Hi, from the Herald Tribune. Right, I want to ask you questions about this. How do you think that your daughter's grandfather would feel about her going to, And we just basically got hard talked in our lounge. And my dad was, he wasn't to be trifled with. He was a big riot cop, so he was he did the Springbok tour, and that he was one of those cops. So he removed that fellow from our house. But I still remember thinking, as a kid, I think that stayed with me. Like, I would never want to put someone in that situation. Why would you do that? Because to me, I really enjoy talking to most of the people that, well, I do, just all of the people that we talk to. I really do. It's fun. And I think what's annoying is that sometimes you'll talk to a sporto and you'll be talking away to them off air. They're like, yeah, it's good. Yeah, chatting away. And they're just the best people. And you're going, great, let's get you on here and let's do this. And then you start rolling and they switch into interview them, and you're like,
yeah, really looking forward to it. No, I'm really excited. I've been doing really well. It's been coming out really good in the nets. Really excited. Yeah.
I love that one. I love the deadpan. Yeah, it's always exciting, obviously, when you play a game against Australia. It's always exciting, obviously. And I wanted to have this game called the Tom Latham game where I steal a bit of that audio and then I play it on air and you have to guess, has Tom just won a game or lost a game? Because I don't think you can tell straight away off it. But that's come from somewhere as well, or is a little bit. Like, we found out the best Tom Latham story this year, which was like good fun, was, so there's a fighter in the UFC, Brad Quake Riddell. And Mark went down and spoke to him and he did this thing. Hey, you do this thing now, right? Yeah. Was fighting always your thing? No. Oh, who was the toughest guy in your class? And he's like, oh, this guy called Tom Latham. And he went, oh, Tom Latham, the cricketer. And he goes, no. But he was also in my class. Now, this is a different Tom Latham. And there were two Tom Lathams in the same class. And they actually had a brother with the same name as well. And apparently the wrong Tom Latham got announced in assembly, pulled on stage and congratulated for making the first 15 in a school prize giving. And we were like, this is a great one. So we actually managed to talk to Cricket Tom Latham about it. And it was great fun because he was blah, blah, blah. Then off he went. And it's like, I think one of the frustrations is the thing of look, we were people that loved sport in the first place. It made us feel as kids that we loved it, and you grew up loving it. And obviously we're all failed sports people, but we love it. And that's why you end up in a place like radio sport. Yeah. And the thing about it is like, sometimes you kind of think, oh, I wish the people listening got a chance to hear you guys being you, because they'd love you so much. And you would actually find that, I think your experiences as a sports person of being out somewhere might be a lot nicer. Like an Angus Tarvale, who is just a, fantastically interesting fellow who's obviously had some, trials in his life. And it's given him an interesting outlook on stuff. But what a neat guy. And he's managed to drop that. And now when you get, well, not anymore, but when you get him on air, he sounds just like him. And you're like, yeah. And then so many, when we would have him on the radio, people texting in, oh, Angus is really cool. What a neat guy. Like that kind of thing. So, but it's hard though. I mean, like, I think what can happen is that, like quite often lots of people, human beings, will hold a grudge against someone for something they said about them ages ago. Yep. And that's harder for us, I guess, to expect for interview subjects to just shake that off and carry on.
Like media manager killed the sport radio star. Fair?
Yeah, I think so. Well, because I think what happened is that I think a lot of people got into media management out of media thinking, oh, this is great. Well, I can work this for this. Yep. And then they come up against it and find, no, the players don't want to, so you go and make up a reason. Or coach doesn't want them to, so you go make up the reason. Yep. Actually, that guy hates that dude who's doing that interview. Just go make up a reason. Oh, he can't, he's in the gym. Oh, he can't, he's doing that. Like, there was
There were two guys by the end of my career that I refused to talk to. Right. One guy, because I said off the record a little flippant something or other, and he printed it, so you get an X for that. Another guy I asked to not ask about something, and he did, and so he got an X for that. But mostly everyone was pretty good. But I think there is that trust barrier that has to be there. Otherwise, you're not going to get the best. There's an element that that they sort of cut you off at the pass, as opposed to let you get over and make bigger mistakes later on that they can actually they could do better out of. And there was a couple, but disappointing, but it happens, and I guess you just sort of suck it up. But it's
so I've got this thought on this, that so when in the jobs I've had profile, like, and at some stages of it, I was probably what you'd call like mid-level famous, you know, right? So you get a bit of that, and it's weird, and it's the difference of.
You've always been Channel Z, bro.
But you know, it's the difference of going to, I don't know, standing in a bookstore and looking through magazines, to one day you're there and you realise out of the corner of your eye people are kind of looking at you, right? And you get a bit of that. And sportos get it. Actors and actresses get it. People that get into public office get it as well. And I kind of thought to myself, man, for all the sports practices you do, was there ever one that taught you how to be famous? And I don't think there is. And even, you know, like even the way that, you know, media types do, there's not actually a thing. You're supposed to just, or even musicians, you're just supposed to somehow be up there in front of the attention cannon and just deal with it. Like so Channel Z days, right? So we would have, I remember there was one evolution of a band in particular. First time they come in, they're fresh out of the blocks. Oh, they were adorable. They're coming in, their hair's all nicely brushed and all like this as well. And then as they would come in over the months, like 6 months, 3 months, slowly we get a little bit cooler, and then we're a little bit cooler. And then one of them comes in the whole time with his sunglasses on, just sits through the entire, this is in the morning, sits there and the timing with the sunnies on, and he's got an interesting hat by this stage, so that's a good way to define yourself. And he's got all this as well, but you know what I mean? But no one teaches you how to be famous, and they disappeared up their own ass. And I go and lecture at the broadcasting school quite often, and I say to them, look, in your first year, when you get out, it can be exciting and all this, and all of a sudden people care what you think about music and care what you people about things, and you can just disappear up your own ass. And I mean, so you've got to keep your social circle big enough of the people that know who you are, because it's so unrelatable. I imagine it's the same for sport. I imagine it's the same for actors. I imagine it's the same for a lot of things like that. You just tend to be around those people because you talk shop a lot, and not a lot of them can relate to your weird hours or relate to the weird relationship with the public.
I never got taught ever to tell someone, you know, you're out with a friend. I was out with, one example, out with my wife then, no, probably fiance at the time. We're out. We didn't get to see each other too much. We're in a pub, and a guy comes down, sits down, and goes, "You're Ian O'Brien, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Yeah. Hey mate, how you doing?" And he goes, "Hey man, do you mind if I sit down?" And we never ever got taught how to tell someone to go away. Never ever. And so and this is it's quite a common thing. You'll be standing somewhere having a chat with a mate.
I know what you mean.
And they come and sit down and they go, "Ah, you're like, yeah, I know And so we never got taught that. And I was like, we should have been taught that. And so I had to, like, I worked it out. I said, you know, like, "Oh, mate, look, really sorry. Excuse me, wife and I, girl partner and I, we don't, you know, it's our night out together. Do you mind if we just hang out together tonight?" And they're normally pretty cool. But I had to really work out how to deal with those sort of things. And there's so many things that we're not, as sportos, as you call it, and you know what, how to deal with situations that you've never dealt with before. All of a sudden, your face is familiar, and they're interested, which is awesome, which is cool. Yeah, don't get me wrong, it's flattering, and I you know what I mean. But then it's just like, there's so many parts of it. And so part of this is, so I'm going back to university in May, going back to do some psychology. But
nice.
Yeah, mate, it's something I wanted to do for a long time, and I keep talking about it. But there's a massive part of what I wanted to do is the over preparation for dealing with emotions and dealing with, so it's the person behind the player. So dealing with those sorts of things, preparing for the rest of your, for, you know, while you're doing what you're doing, and being able to deal with some of those things. Well, it's not life coaching or anything like that. It's just dealing with, how are you going to deal with this situation, and preloading up with here's some scenarios that are going to affect your life. How are you going to deal with it? And so when you started talking about how to deal with fame and things, it was like, you already know what I'm sort of, this is where I want to go and what I'm going to do. It's interesting talk.
Yeah, it's an odd one, eh? Like when you think it's so high performance in every other way. Like here's your diet, drink this grams of sodium and this and da 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 da. You got to, you know, we have to run this many wind sprints. Like, how do I deal with someone? Because I think the thing is this. I think I put it down to, it feels like people have already decided on you before you've met them.
Yep.
And so I'd hit a stage where I stepped away from a few jobs because it all got too much for me.
Yeah.
It just became very weird. Because I'm a hermit. Like I said, swimmer. Yep. Did radio by myself.
Yep.
And when Petra and John and I were doing ice and we'd go out, like, I'm working with two of the most beautiful people in New Zealand, so it was really cool. So we would go somewhere, and it was one of the camera guys that picked up my trick, and I didn't realise that he'd seen it. I'd let those two walk ahead of me about 2 or 3 meters, because you've got, you know, John's 6'1", Petra's statuesque and gorgeous, and the nice bit was I figured out just where I needed to be, because people would walk past them and then they'd turn to look. So I knew just the sight line. Basically, I found the blind spot of where to be. Not that I thought they'd look at me, but because I didn't know how to react when they did.
Yeah.
I think, and that took a long time.
Like, perfectly protecting yourself to stay out of trouble. Like, I always used to, so those, I would walk in first because they didn't know who I was, and then behind would be the rest of the guys. So I would kind of get the free pass on the way through, because I didn't even know, you know. And then later on, and then a little bit later on, then you would sort of hide behind, you tuck in behind, and it was it's amazing, those things that you end up noticing you're doing. It's a crazy place.
Yeah, like, I mean, like, as you say, most people are really nice, and it's not like you're doing the whole, don't ever say anything or don't go up to anyone like that. But a lot of it is that the person is quite often confused on, they're not quite sure what to do. You know, like a good thing that I was told is that to try and keep yourself in check was when they come up and go, "Oh man, I love you." It's like, well, they don't really, because they don't know you, but they like what you made. So be really proud that what you've made was that as well. And I mean, to be fair, you know, you get abuse as well. People feel they can. Our text line at Radio Sport in the morning was hilarious. Man, you used to say, I mean, the amount of C-bombs that you got thrown at you, and just swearing at you. And it was basically anytime you spoke unfavorably of someone's favorite sport, out it came, and it flew at you, and that was fine.
And they're paying for that privilege too. They're paying for the privilege.
It's like, fine, do that. You know, I ended up keeping a little file of them. I mean, in the end, you just, I think where I got to was that, like, you know, like, there'd be somewhere you would get you'd make a mistake, and the problem is when you're trying to be too perfect, because then you beat yourself up for it over and over and over again. And you've just got to realize you are going to make mistakes. Like, you know, you'll confuse game scenarios or something, then you get the angry text come in, "Oh, it's not even that. If I was bloody getting paid to do that, I'd do that." You know, and they get really angry. But my thing was, I thought, all I'd see is I'd read that and go like, "Okay, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, you got me." And I'd often write back, "Yep, stuff that up. Thanks. Thanks for the detail." But a lot of the time you think it's probably someone just driving to work who hates their job, who got to listen to us and went, "I'll listen to these bastards. I want to do that." So I could fully understand that. So I'm not going to get mad at them or anything. Of course, you know.
How angry did you get at yourself? How angry did you used to, like, if you took 4 takes to get something on Ice TV, you took 10 takes to get the voice right for Brotown. How angry did you used to? Did you used to?
It was a problem. Yeah, it was a problem. So what I did to protect myself at first was I was really control freak about the entire creative process. So I owned everything, right? So working in Hastings as the character guy in the morning, I owned that, and that was me, and that was good. And I felt that I had creative control. And as I look back now, that's amazing for the program director to put me in a position where I was like that, but that's what I had. I got poached up to Hamilton to do a similar sort of role. Again, I was really like that as well. Push forward to Auckland, same kind of way. You have 100% faith in yourself and what you do. Went through various jobs, went to Ice TV, and then there's the bit where, before that I worked in an ad agency just briefly for about 3 months. And that was really the one where you walk in and you realise, oh, wow, I thought I was pretty smart and funny with things, but there is a room full of people here who are like this. And actually, that guy Steve is funnier than I think I've ever met anyone in my life. And it's like, oh, sits you back a little bit. So we used to do the show on Max TV, which was just music telly. We had one locked off camera, but that's where my love of lo-fi came from. So things like I remember Sue saying to me, he goes, I mean, you've either got the budget for awesome graphics or just use shit ones, because shit ones look way funnier. The worst thing is the half-ass, where he goes, where you look like you're trying to be Flash. It's just terrible, mate. Go with that. So having been around them and then getting to ISTV, that's why I bought in things like, quite often I'd just write the graphics on a bit of cardboard and just lift it up into the bottom of the shot and back down again. That's why I liked single shot things. It's why I liked shooting on video. It's why I like that. But I was still quite control freak. And then we had a director called Ken Burns, and he was amazing.
Ken Burns.
Yes, exactly. And we'd done a sketch, and we'd gone, and John had got some kittens, and we'd gone to film something, and we were in a creative low at that stage, and we filmed some things, and we weren't quite sure what we were going to do. So we had the last one where basically John goes to the pantry and he opens it, and I'd picked up a kitten, and I've got 2 pieces of bread, and I'm like just about to eat it, and he's like, Nathan, what are you doing? Nathan, what are you doing? And we went on and we had a bit of a chat and that sort of thing afterwards, and it wasn't that funny. I remember we drove back, we're like, oh, that didn't work. And then Ken re-edited it, and he freeze framed it on the bit where I'm just turning to look, and it was really funny, and it was way funnier than anything I could have thought of. And that still remains the moment in my life when I went, do you know what? Actually, other people's ideas do make yours better. They really, really do. And I couldn't have thought of that. And so that was the bit that dropped me. But I would get very much like that. And I think the angriest I got was during a show that was very unnatural to me. So it was kind of like one of those link shows where you're doing, hey, look at this funny video. And I remember thinking, this sucks. This just sucks to do. Like, it wasn't fun to do. It seemed really ungenuine. Though they'd had John and Nathan arrive. So TV3 were trying to find a way to put us on everything. And I just wasn't very good at that. And that's the bit that I was furious that day, because I kept trying to get this take right. I couldn't get it right. And the thing about it is that you feel like you've got a camera person and a director and other people. And man, they could have been done 2 hours ago and they could have been home. And so you start to feel the pressure more for them than on you. And that's why you start to beat yourself up on things. And that was the one. It took me like 28 takes to do something. And that, if you're like me and you're used to just riffing or doing radio where it's one and done, man, once you get past 8, it just, then you've got no energy. Then you get the words right, but you've said it like, blah, 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 blah.
And then the cameramen are going to be talking when you've left. God, I hope we never get him again. And then the sound people are going to be talking when you left. It's like, but that's all in your head, isn't it? Like, it's like, they probably don't. Yes. They're actually getting paid by the hour. They're okay.
Yeah, you're right. They don't care. Like, I always, to me, but that was always the fascinating thing. Like, the bit I enjoy, and so that without a word of bullshit, is in the radio studio, there is this awesome room that's full of buttons and things that do things, right? So it's like this. When you're doing TV work, there's all these different pieces of it that work. Like when you're in a studio and you go into that little control room and you're like, oh my God, there's like 20 people in here, all doing a thing. And it feels like it's like a large marionette with all these strings that are trying to make this thing work. So you're just one of the strings that's making it move up and down, but your face represents everyone's work in the background, you know? So that would be the ones when you were stuffing up tapes, you'd be like, damn, you'd feel it more for them. And that's, you know, I don't know how you shake that.
But okay, so similar for me with cricket, and you go out and you bowl the bad ball, and it's not that's my figures. Okay, that's our score. That just happens to be our country's score. And then you bowl another bad ball, and that's my figures. That's our team's score, and that's our country's score. And then you go home at the end of the night, and you're like, geez, I bowled average today. Or the batsman was really good today, but either way, you feel the same. And the team, your teammates, there's 10 other guys, there's the backroom staff, there's the rest. You end up down some holes. Did you find yourself like that, or could you leave it behind once you got home?
No. I got myself in a real hole. So that's why I finished ITV early.
Okay, yeah.
Because I'd sort of hit a stage where I just wasn't in a very good mental space at all. I also got really sick. I actually ended up in quarantine for a month because I had meningitis.
Wow, okay.
So there's a crazy one for you. And I think while I was in there, it was just the workload of it all, because I was doing two things. I was doing Channel Z in the morning and the breakfast, and then doing Ice TV. And I know they both don't sound like real jobs, but your brain goes constantly on it, and it just wears you down. So it's not a physical wearing down, but it's definitely that. And it can just push your mood down. Because I think the thing is that you realize that your output of creative ideas is getting smaller and smaller, and that is a horrible thing if you're a creative, because there is that terrible bit where you get to and you go, what if that was my last idea? Like what if I don't have any more? Like what if that was it? And it's a real concern, because you come up with all your best ideas in boredom.
I used to call those, so I had those days, I used to call them career days. And I knew that I knew that as I was in the van going to the ground, in the bus going to the ground, or whatever, I knew that if I don't get it right today, this could be my last day at cricket. This could be my last day of doing this. I can go back and play for Wellington, sure, but I quite like doing this at this level. And I remember having, and I called them career days, and I remember having 4 or 5, which sounds a lot, and it was, and I remember, like, if I don't get it right, I'm cooked. I'm out.
Yeah.
This is the last. That's a pretty heavy prospect to have on your shoulders. And you, as a creative, same thing. You got to A, think of something funny, and B, make it funny.
Yeah.
That's
every day.
That's scary, bro.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I know, because I mean, I've had a few comedian mates that have gone into radio.
Yeah.
And so theirs is actually, it seems like the same craft, but it's an entirely different craft. It's just output. Output's very different. Yeah. You know, like, comedians craft things beautifully, but they're kind of like long form writers. They take a lot of time. And I've had a couple of comedian friends who got into radio at first, and they're like, this is great, I love it. And then after a month, they ring you and they go, how do I do it every day? Yeah. I've got to come up with these every day. Like I got to help John Bridges when he was producing 7 Days. They did one called 7 Days of Sport. Yeah. So I got brought in there as a sort of as an assistant producer type thing.
And you got to ride bicycles for 7 days, basically, didn't you?
Yes, yeah, yeah. But you know, like, so you've got joke writers though in those rooms, right? So you're in there with some of the funniest people, and they're just like churning out jokes, and you're trying to come up with them. But even then, like, you might have like a guy like Nick Ratto, and you've got Corey in there as well, and you're sitting there, and you're trying to come up with gags for something, and there's the bit where the whole room goes silent, everyone's just staring at the ceiling, or someone's looking at the door, and no one can even think of a gag, and you think, there are 5 really, really funny people in here, and no one can think of one. Yeah. This is tough, but you hit them, but then you feel that pressure, I guess, of trying to come up with them. But yeah, like you say, it's the thing, and you go, what if I haven't got this right anymore? Like, what if this is it? Yeah. And also too, the bit for me was, I was sitting in a meeting one day, so we'd have these meetings on Tuesdays. And, you know, the boss would go, right, so this week we're going to do a story about this, a story about this, a story about this. And none of them excited me. And I found myself going, ugh. And then I had a kind of an out-of-body experience where I felt like the most spoiled guy in the world. And I thought, hang on, like, when we started doing this just all seemed like a super impossible dream. And to my brain and my way of thinking, it might be a little bit different than the way that other people do it at work. But I felt like, well, then I shouldn't be here. Like, I felt like I was taking up a spot of someone who would do far better work and actually be way better at this than I am right now. Because to me, I felt, I think I've run my course in this. And I thought, you know, New Zealand On Air paid for us for the first 3 years to help get us up and running. Yeah. Now we're here, the production, and also Petra and John deserve more than this. So that was actually the meeting when I decided to make the cut. I didn't tell anyone for ages. And pretty much the crew found out during the last show that I ever did, because I didn't want to fuss. So I pretty much announced it while I was doing one of the final links, and in my ear, you know, you're wearing your earpiece, right? You can hear the control room, people going, what? What? Oh my God, what? Are you serious? What? But that was just kind of how I felt like going, you know? And I remember, like, so I tuned in the next year. So Hugh Sunday, so he replaced me on the show. And I remember I tuned in to watch Ice TV, and I thought, I just want to watch because I just wanted to make sure John and Petra were okay.
Yeah.
So I watched up till the first ad break, and then I was like, yeah, no, I'm done with this. And then I turned it off and I didn't watch anymore. And it wasn't out of anger or anything. It was as I watched it, I thought, no, that's right. That's where I didn't want to be anymore. Yeah. So it's gone. So, but I was lucky. I mean, I still got some John Bridges in my life by doing the breakfast show in the morning. Yeah. You know, so
is that the hardest job? Is that the hardest job in media, the breakfast show? It
is.
Hey, you have to be funny all the time. Yeah. Like you said about your comedian friend, he did it for a month, and you got to be funny. You're up stupid early, and you are reacting every morning to news, to events, and you have to make up a crazy amount of content. Is that the hardest job?
Yeah, that's the last bit you mentioned. It's the amount of content you need to come up with is tons of it. So you end up living a really weird life, where you are, you know, as much as you say to your kids, get off the phones, get off your screens, but you've got to be, because you're monitoring every last second bit of news that comes in. And also too, the way that the breakfast shows is set up, you're actually supposed to come up with the new news every day that everyone else reacts to, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's okay. You might be able to pull that off 2 or 3 times a week, but you're trying to do it every day. And even more than that, they're trying to make you do it every half an hour. So there's something. So I think now, for example, in newsrooms around, like, I know a lot of people get annoyed with you know, online newspapers. They go, oh, they're just churning out crap to me now. Where's the real journalism gone? Well, the reality, and this is horrible, the reality is that people tune into their phone, right? Because that's where you got to win. And they want to see a new story every time they open it. And it's just true. I mean, if you think about our own habits, like that's why things like Facebook and Twitter are successful, because there is something brand new every time you look at it. And then you scroll down a bit and then you hit the old stuff. But, you know, if you're an online publication, any of them around the world, you've got to be churning out new stuff every 7.5 minutes. So what they're doing is, a journalist can't justify their pay packet if they're only doing one story a week. You just can't. So they end up, the time squish goes on them. So they're doing that. So then the reporting becomes more just putting out a press release, and then somebody goes, oh, these people, this media is trying to feed us out to make us dumb. They're not. They're full of kids who were like I was when I started, on very low pay, trying to churn out as much as they can for their own survival. So they're in a really weird thing. But no, breakfast shows are weird because you've got the odd time to wake up, the odd time to be up in your day as well. Sure. Yeah. And then you have a weird little crash afterwards. So I come back and I used to have a sleep for a couple of hours, and then I go get the girls from school, and you know, kind of up again, trying to do normal that stuff as well. And then you're back into prepping the night before. So it's, like you say, it's just more the gathering up of stuff. But as you do it more, you get better at just looking at a whole bunch of information and spotting the 5 interesting things. And by that, I mean, I don't know if they're necessarily more interesting than the others, but those are the 5 pieces you realize that something in you can turn into a decent story or like that. Because, the key was, and I think I've always been this way, is I've always been interested in things. So I like finding out new things. I like interviews where I go, oh, really? You know, like, I think that's good. Like, I don't, but a lot of people in media don't at all. They like to sound like the authority. I knew all of this. Why this? You know, so that's sort of why you get the statement things rather than questions. You know, time pressure, but also trying to control it there. And that's that thing where I was talking about before. Once I realised that other stuff makes things better, you got to realise as an interviewer, it's really the other person that makes things better. So it's great fun, you know, when you just get real feelings out of people because it's interesting and it makes them more human.
And this is why I'm so annoyed that right now, say like Radio Sport is off the air, because there is this format that, with, even if you wanted to stick in some ad breaks and all over the shop, there is still an hour. There's another hour because there's another person to talk, and there's another person to talk. And I think it's sad that couldn't have been done or been adapted or whatever. And it's a sad thing to lose. I mean, it'll be back, I'm sure, but it's sad to lose. Mate, I know you've got meetings today, and I know you've got things to do. I know you've got horses to feed, and
well, we're actually cut off from the pony club. So my daughter rides a lovely horse called Tahi that was dirt cheap, And he was so when we got him down off the truck, and I know nothing about horses, so this is really my wife. I'm scared of them. They're giant, and you've seen them. They're huge.
They're huge. I spoke to Brendan yesterday. He does the big huge tall thoroughbred ones.
Oh,
so,
Jesus.
Yeah.
No. This is a pony, thank God. And he got down off the truck. He didn't know what gravel was. Like, we tried to give him a carrot. He didn't know what that was. Like, it fell on the ground. He's like, well, what is this? What's this thing? You know. And now she rides him, and you know, and goes to that. So it's quite lovely about the Pony Club. It seems to be a place where there's a lot of mums and daughters really making up, and you know, mums that would have loved to have had a horse when they were younger and they just never could. Yeah. So there's a lot of it with it. But no, we shut off from there at the moment because of the whole COVID thing. So we can't make that part of our bubble. So my poor wife can't go out to have a look at it. Like, she really enjoys just the fresh air of it all, and the stuff out there. It's a beautiful place. It's lovely, you know, but it means that we've had to pay someone else to pick up our pony's horse shit, because you got to do 4 barrels a week to help look after the place. So I haven't got that. No, but I've got a board meeting today.
Yeah, I know.
School board meeting, and today I find out about what my redundancy thing is. It's radio sport as well.
Hey, I hope it all goes well.
Yeah, man.
It's awesome, because you learn that it'll be all right. You learn to not say those things. You learn to not go, oh yeah, man, everything will come up all right, because sometimes it bloody well doesn't. But I hope it does. I hope everything comes up awesome. You've done everything. There's not much left to conquer, which means that you can go and coach it.
Yeah, exactly. I need to be in a Marvel film. Can I be in a Marvel film somehow? Maybe that's what I need. If I could just be in the back of a Marvel film. Surely in that big attack scene at the end. I
wanted to get in the back of Hunt for the Wilder People and JoJo. I wanted one of those. Something. I want to be the skipping Hitler in the Falklands. That's what the scene was.
That movie Boy, right? So Taika's movie Boy. So Boy is based about 120 kilometers north of where our marae is in Mahia. Yeah. And it was just so funny, because just like watching Boy was like, this is it. I was that age at that time, and that looks like every time you went back to Mahia. Like, you know, it's like the whole, is there someone in the show? Is there a fella called Weston? Where's Weston? You know, like, it was just like, there's got to be a Weston. Yeah. So you're like, surely there's got to be one here. So, so then with
Hemi's here.
Yeah, exactly.
Hemi. Yep.
Or even the bit with the crayfish on the table is like, ooh, crayfish again. Because of course Mahia is all about crayfish and stuff like it. So that now it's crayfish and rockets. But apart from that, it's that. So I was like, yeah, I'm fully relating to this. But yeah. But anyway, man, thank you for having me on.
I love this. I love getting to talk to people that I don't normally get to talk to. So kia ora, bro. Thank you heaps. Appreciate your time.
No worries.
All the best. I'll stop recording.
Okay.